Family cut me off for marrying a man they didn't approve of because of his ethnicity. But now my sister's perfect husband is facing serious criminal charges and they want my lawyer husband to save him, so I slammed the door in their faces. For years, I had made peace with the fact that my parents didn't consider me their daughter. I wasn't bitter anymore, just indifferent. They had made their choice loud and clear the day they cut me off. They chose to only acknowledge my sister because she married the man they approved of, the golden child, the obedient one. I had married for love, but because my husband wasn't of the same ethnicity, they had deemed me a disgrace. They didn't just distance themselves, they erased me. No invitations, no holiday calls, no checking in. It was as if I had never existed. And honestly, I was fine with that. My husband and I built a life without them. We were happy, successful, and far removed from their outdated, controlling views. It had been years since I even thought about them. But one random afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was her, my mother. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. The moment I answered, I regretted it. She didn't start with pleasantries. No, how have you been? No acknowledgement that we hadn't spoken in years. Instead, her voice, frantic and desperate, cut straight to the point. She needed my help. For a second, I actually laughed. The sheer audacity of this woman who had written me off like an inconvenience now acted as if nothing had happened. I almost hung up, but something in her voice made me pause. There was fear. I asked her why she was calling, and that's when she said it. My sister's husband was in legal trouble. Serious trouble. The kind that makes the news, the kind that ruins lives, and they wanted my husband, my incredibly successful lawyer husband, to defend him. I nearly dropped the phone. Of all the reasons she could have had to reach out, this was the one. Not because she regretted how she treated me, not because she wanted to mend our relationship, but because her golden child's life was falling apart. And suddenly, I had value again. I let her ramble for a while, explaining how my sister's husband had been accused of something terrible. She kept insisting that it was all a misunderstanding, that he needed a strong defense, and that they knew my husband was the best. I stayed silent, letting her talk herself in circles before finally cutting her off. I told her no. Dead silence on the other end. She sputtered, caught off guard. How could I say no? Did I not care about my family? Did I not understand the seriousness of the situation? I reminded her that according to them, I wasn't part of the family. I had been cast out like I was nothing. All because I dared to marry outside their expectations. They had one daughter, right? Well, it was time for their one daughter to figure this out on her own. Her voice turned sharp, furious. She accused me of being selfish, of holding on to the past, of not having a heart, and a load of other things. I told her she made her bed, and now she could lie in it. I ended the call before she could say another word. And for a moment, I just sat there, gripping my phone tightly. My heart was pounding, but not from sadness. It was anger. Pure, burning anger at their hypocrisy. They had spent years pretending I didn't exist. And now, because they needed something, I was supposed to be their savior. I shook my head, setting my phone down and fully intending to forget the whole thing. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. Actually, why blame the universe? It was my own stupidity to answer that call. Not even an hour later, my phone buzzed again. Another familiar number. This time it was my sister. I debated ignoring it, but I wanted to tell her no to her face, so I answered. Unlike my mother, my sister didn't start with desperation. She started with fake warmth, as if she hadn't been perfectly content letting our parents disown me. She asked how I was and how life had been, if I was happy. I let her play the game for a minute before I cut her off. I told her to get to the point. And that's when the tears started. She said she was scared, that she didn't know what to do, that her perfect life was unraveling. She begged me to ask my husband to take the case. I asked her why she thought I would do that, and she sniffled, saying, because she was my sister. I laughed. She had never been my sister when it mattered. She never once stood up for me and never reached out when our parents disowned me. Never tried to mend things. She had happily lived in her little bubble while I was treated like a stain on the family. And now suddenly she was my sister again. I told her she had some nerve. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying that even if we hadn't spoken in years, I should understand what she was going through, that I of all people should know what it was like to feel abandoned. That nearly set me off. I told her she didn't get to compare my pain to hers. I had been abandoned for existing. She was being abandoned because she had chosen to build her life around someone who turned out to be a monster. There was a difference. She sobbed, saying she didn't know, that she had no idea what her husband was involved in, and that she was a victim, too. I told her I didn't care. She begged me to reconsider, but I told her my answer was final. Then, just as I was about to hang up, I threw in one last thing. I told her that maybe this was her karma. I hung up before she could respond. I sat back, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. Not happiness, because this entire situation was awful, but satisfaction in knowing that for once they had to face the consequences of their actions. They had to face the consequences of their choices. I had spent years being treated like I didn't exist. Now I was finally making sure they knew what that felt like. Update 1. I thought that would be the end of it. I had made my stance clear twice. There was no way my mother or sister could still believe I would come running to their aid, but I had underestimated just how desperate they had become. The very next morning, my husband woke me up with a look of irritation. He had just checked his phone to find multiple missed calls and texts from my family. My mother, my sister, and even a few extended relatives had decided to bombard him directly, pleading for him to take my sister's husband's case. He sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the messages, shaking his head. He read a few aloud, mostly my mother and sister begging him. There was also a particularly manipulative message from an aunt trying to play the family sticks together card. I groaned, rubbing my temples. This was beyond pathetic. After all these years, they had never once acknowledged my husband as part of the family. He was the reason they had cut me off in the first place. And yet now they had no shame in asking for his help. My husband asked me if I wanted him to respond, and I told him no. I wanted to handle it myself. I got out of bed, grabbed my phone, and immediately called my mother. She picked up on the first ring, as if she had been waiting for my call. She jumped right into it, acting like we were in the middle of a conversation rather than one she had forced into existence. She said she knew I was upset, but I needed to put my feelings aside and think about my sister. She said that despite everything, I was still family, and family helped each other. I let out a bitter laugh, asking her when exactly I had stopped being family. Was it when she disowned me, when she refused to acknowledge my marriage, and when she pretended I didn't exist for years? She got quiet and then sighed like I was being difficult on purpose. She said she wasn't proud of how things had happened in the past, but this wasn't about the past. This was about my sister's future. I shook my head, feeling my anger rise. I told her my sister had made her bed. She had married the perfect man they wanted for her. She had followed their rules and done everything the way they wanted. And now that it was all falling apart, they expected me, the outcast, to save her. She snapped, saying that I was being cruel, that I had every right to be upset about the past, but this wasn't the time to be petty. Petty? That was the word she used. I asked her if she really thought I was being petty. I reminded her that they had stripped me of my family when I needed them the most, that I had gotten married without them there, that I had built a life without them, that I had learned to live knowing I was dead to them. And now, when it suited them, I was suddenly family again. She hesitated, but then said something that made my blood run cold. She said that my sister's husband's case was complicated, and if he went to prison, it would destroy my sister's life. She admitted that things weren't looking good, but with the right defense, he could get a reduced sentence or maybe even get out of it completely. I was stunned. I asked her if she even cared whether or not he was guilty, and she stammered, saying that the charges were serious. Yes, but that didn't mean he was a bad person, that he had made mistakes, but he deserved another chance. I scoffed, asking if she would have felt the same way if it had been my husband in his position. Silence. I pressed further, telling her that if it were my husband facing these charges, she wouldn't be calling anybody to ask for help. She would be using it as proof that I had made the wrong choice in life. She would be telling everyone how I had shamed the family. More silence. I laughed, shaking my head, and I told her that she and my sister had lived in their little bubble for so long that they actually thought they could manipulate their way out of anything, that they could twist the truth, make excuses, and expect the world to bend to their will. But reality didn't work that way. She finally snapped, saying that if I wasn't going to help, the least I could do was stop acting so smug about it. I told her I wasn't being smug. I was disgusted. She tried to guilt-trip me again, saying that my sister was falling apart, that she was scared, alone, and didn't deserve to suffer for her husband's mistakes. I told her that my sister made a choice. She had chosen to cut me off because that's what they wanted. She had chosen to stay silent when I was disowned. And most importantly, she had chosen to build a life with a man who was now facing charges for something horrific. She had no problem with choices when they benefited her, but now she had to live with them. My mother was crying at this point, saying she never thought I could be this heartless. I sighed, rubbing my temples. I told her I wasn't heartless. I was just done. They weren't my family anymore. They were nothing to me. And with that, I ended the call. I tossed my phone onto the bed and let out a long breath. My husband watched me for a moment before asking if I was okay. I turned to him, feeling exhausted, but also lighter. I told him I was fine, better than fine. I had complete closure years ago. I wasn't some child desperate to please. For so long, a tiny part of me had wondered if my parents ever thought about me, if they ever regretted cutting me off, if they ever wished things had gone differently. Now I had my answer. They only cared when they needed something, and I would never give them anything again. Update 2. I thought that after my last conversation with my mother, they would finally get the message. I laid it all out for her. I was done. I wasn't going to swoop in and save her golden daughter from the consequences of her choices. But of course, I had underestimated just how desperate and entitled my family could be. 2 days after our last call, I got a message from my sister. It was short and straight to the point. She said that she understood I was angry, but I needed to stop being selfish. Selfish? I laughed when I read it. The woman who had sat silently while our parents cut me out of their lives, The woman who had reaped all the benefits of being their perfect obedient daughter was calling me selfish because I refused to help clean up her mess. I ignored the message. If that was her definition of being selfish, then I had no problem being it. But then another one came through and she went from guilt-tripping to outright demanding. She said that whether I liked it or not, I had an obligation to help her. She said that I was being cruel for letting her suffer when I had the power to fix things. Fix things. I stared at those words for a long time. As if this was just some minor inconvenience, as if her husband hadn't committed an actual crime, as if this was just about her and not the people he had hurt. I finally responded with one sentence. I told her she was on her own. I again foolishly thought that would be the end of it. But the next day, my mother called my husband, and this time she didn't bother with guilt or manipulation. She went straight to anger. She demanded to know why he wasn't doing anything. She said that as a lawyer, he had a duty to defend those who needed him, that he had married into this family, and that meant he was responsible for protecting it. I was sitting next to him when she called. I could hear every word she spat through the speaker. My husband let her rant, his face completely calm, his patience bordering on impressive. When she finally stopped to take a breath, he simply asked her one thing. He asked if she was under the impression that he worked for free. Silence. Then she stammered, saying that obviously they didn't expect a free service, but surely he could just. He cut her off, telling her that first of all, he wasn't a criminal defense attorney. He said that even if he wanted to take the case, which he absolutely did not, it wasn't even his area of expertise. And second, even if he were the best defense attorney in the country, he wouldn't lift a finger for a man like my sister's husband. He said that at the end of the day, it didn't matter how much they begged, guilted, or screamed. His answer was no. My mother was furious. She said that she had always known he wasn't truly part of the family, but she hoped that at least he would have the decency to set his pride aside for the sake of his wife's sister. My husband didn't even bother arguing. He just told her she needed to find a lawyer who was willing to take the case and then hung up. I was livid, not because she had tried to manipulate him. I had expected that. But because even now, after everything, she still had the audacity to act like my husband wasn't good enough. She had never respected him, never accepted him. But now when she needed him, she expected him to drop everything and serve her. It was disgusting. I was so angry that I actually called my mother back. I didn't even give her a chance to start talking. I asked her if she had lost her mind. I asked her if she genuinely thought she could disrespect my husband for years and then turn around and demand his help. She immediately tried to play the victim, saying she was just trying to do what was best for my sister. I cut her off, and I told her I didn't care about what was best for my sister. I told her that my sister had made her choices just like my mother had. I yelled at her that she was the one who decided I wasn't part of the family anymore. That was her choice. She made her bed, so why was she crying about lying in it? She went silent for a moment before she did something that truly shocked me. She broke down crying. Not the fake, manipulative kind. Not the kind where she was trying to guilt me. For the first time in years, my mother actually sounded scared. She kept saying that this wasn't how things were supposed to turn out, that my sister had done everything right, that she had married the right man, built the right life, and followed every rule. She said she didn't understand how everything had gone so wrong. And in that moment, I saw it so clearly. My mother had spent her whole life believing that if she controlled everything, if she forced things to go the way she wanted, then nothing could ever fall apart. She had shaped my sister's entire life, making sure it aligned with her vision. And now that vision had crumbled. She didn't know how to handle it. For the first time, she was experiencing what I had gone through all those years ago, what it felt like to have the life you built ripped away. The difference was that I had adapted. I had found happiness elsewhere. She had nothing else. I let out a long sigh, and I told her that maybe this was the universe's way of teaching her a lesson, that no matter how much she tried to control everything, life had a way of humbling people. I told her that I wasn't happy that this was happening to my sister, but I wasn't going to fix it either. She asked if this meant I was really going to let her suffer. I said that I wasn't the one letting her suffer. Her own choices did that. And then I hung up. I sat there for a while, staring at my phone, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Not happiness, not satisfaction. I don't know what it was. Update 3. After my last conversation with my mother, I assumed she had finally understood that I wasn't going to help, that no matter how much she begged, cried, or guilt-tripped, I was done being a pawn in their perfect little world. But I should have known better, because when desperate people start to realize they have no way out, they start getting reckless. It started small. A few missed calls from unknown numbers, and then messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old family friends, distant relatives. At first, I ignored them. But then one message caught my eye. It was from my aunt. She had always been one of the few neutral family members, and she never openly supported my parents' decision to cut me off. But she also never stood up against them. She just stayed quiet. It wasn't her problem. Her message was simple. She said she wasn't sure what was going on, but my mother had called her out of the blue, sobbing, claiming I was punishing her and my sister for something they had done in the past. She said my mother was telling people that I was holding a grudge and refusing to help out of spite, that my husband and I were deliberately turning our backs on family, watching them suffer when we had the power to make it all go away. I had to laugh at that. The way she twisted reality to make herself the victim was truly impressive. I responded to my aunt, laying out the actual truth. I told her exactly why my parents had cut me off in the first place. I reminded her of all the times I had tried to reach out only to be ignored, belittled, or treated like a mistake. And then I told her the real reason they were begging for my help now. I told her about my sister's husband, about what he had done, about how my mother wasn't concerned with the victims, only with making sure her perfect little world didn't come crashing down. There was a long pause before my aunt finally responded. She said she had no idea things had gotten that bad. She said she wished she had spoken up sooner. And I told her it was too late for wishes. I thought that would be the worst of it. But then a few days later, my sister showed up at my door. I didn't even know how she found my address. I stood there stunned as she looked at me with red, swollen eyes, her entire body shaking. She begged me to listen. I didn't want to let her in, but I also knew she wasn't going to leave until she said whatever she came to say. So, I stepped aside and I told her she wasn't welcome here, so to make it quick. She sat down at my kitchen table, gripping her hands together so tightly her knuckles were white. She said she knew she had messed up. She admitted that she had been a coward all these years, going along with whatever our parents wanted because it was easier than standing up for me. She said she never thought she would be the one on the other side, begging for help, feeling like her entire life was crumbling. I sat across from her, arms crossed, waiting for her to get to the point. Then she finally asked the question. She wanted to know if my husband could do anything at all, to help her husband get a lesser sentence. I stared at her in disbelief. After everything, after all the lies and manipulation, after cutting me off for years, she had the nerve to ask that. I asked her if she even understood what she was saying. I asked her if she realized that she wasn't just asking for legal advice. She was asking me to help cover up for a man who had done something unforgivable. Her face crumpled. She said she knew how bad it looked, but she didn't know what else to do. She kept saying she wasn't strong enough to go through this alone. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I told her she had no idea what being alone even felt like. I told her that when I got cut off, when I had no family to turn to and no support, I had to build my own life from scratch. I had to learn to stand on my own 2 feet. And I reminded her that it got even worse after I decided to get engaged. I told her that she had spent her whole life hiding behind our parents, letting them make every decision for her. And now that things were falling apart, she was still looking for someone else to clean up her mess. She shook her head, her voice breaking as she said it wasn't fair, that I didn't understand. I slammed my hands down on the table. I told her she didn't get to talk about fairness. Fairness would have been my parents treating us equally. Fairness would have been my family supporting me instead of tossing me aside. Fairness would have been her standing up for me when I needed her instead of staying silent. She flinched like I had slapped her. I told her that the only reason she was sitting in my house right now was because she had no other options. Not because she suddenly cared about me. She tried to argue, but I cut her off. I told her that if she wanted to fix her life, she needed to take responsibility for it. She needed to stop running to other people and start facing reality. And the reality was that her husband had done something horrific. No lawyer, especially not mine, was going to make that go away. She broke down sobbing. She said she didn't know what to do, that she didn't know how to survive this, and I took a deep breath and told her the truth. I told her she was going to have to learn how to stand on her own just like I did. She looked up at me, her face filled with devastation, and then finally she stood up. She wiped her tears, walked out the door without another word. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty chair where she had been. I knew she had been hoping for a miracle, but miracles don't come for people who only show up when they need something. And I was not the backup plan. Update 4, I should have seen it coming. First my mother had begged, and then my sister cried. And now standing on my doorstep like he owned the place was my father. I hadn't seen him in years. The man who once told me I was no daughter of his. The man who refused to acknowledge my marriage, who spoke of my husband like he was nothing more than a bad decision I'd regret. The man who had let my mother and sister write me out of their lives without a second thought and had pushed for it too. And now here he was. I stared at him through the peephole for a moment, trying to decide if I had the patience for whatever nonsense he was about to spew. I didn't, but I opened the door anyway because if there was one thing I knew about my father, it was that he wasn't the type to leave quietly. The moment he saw me, his face twisted into something between impatience and barely concealed disgust. I kept my expression blank. He wasn't going to faze me, no matter how much he tried. I braced myself for whatever self-righteous speech he had prepared, but he didn't even bother pretending to acknowledge me. He barely spared me a glance before shifting his posture, squaring his shoulders like he was gearing up for something important. Then he said he was here to see my husband. A man-to-man conversation, he called it, like I was nothing. Like I wasn't the one standing in front of him, like I wasn't the one who built this house, built this life, and had every right to slam the door in his face. I felt my grip tighten on the doorframe. I knew what he was doing. This wasn't just about my husband being a lawyer. This was about control, about reminding me that in his eyes I was still just a disobedient daughter who had shamed him, who had no authority, who didn't matter enough to be spoken to directly. It was the same condescending tone he had used my entire life. I felt my anger flare up, hot and sharp, but I shoved it down. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I wouldn't give him the reaction he was looking for. So, I took a breath, steadied my voice, and told him the only thing he needed to hear. I told him I was calling security. No screaming, no arguments, no dramatic confrontations, just a cold, simple dismissal. His expression faltered for a moment, his mouth opening like he wanted to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. I shut the door in his face, and that was that. I stood there for a moment, my hands clenched at my sides, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to march back out there and tell him every single thing I'd been holding back for years. But I wouldn't because he wasn't worth it. Instead, I turned away, letting the weight of what had just happened settle over me. I heard him outside, lingering for a few seconds, probably stunned that I hadn't let him bulldoze his way into my home. Then finally, he left. He had too much pride. Not a single word, no threats, no dramatic declarations, just the sound of his footsteps retreating down my driveway. I felt like I had truly won. Not because I had hurt him, not because I had said anything cutting or cruel, but because I hadn't played into his game. He came here expecting a fight. He expected me to argue, to raise my voice, to beg him to acknowledge me. Instead, I treated him like exactly what he was, a stranger. And that, more than anything, was what he couldn't stand. That night, I sat with my husband on the couch, trying to process everything that had happened. He had known something was wrong the moment I walked back inside. He had seen it in my face, in the way my hands shook slightly as I set my phone down. So, I told him everything, and that was it. I was going to move on from everything.